My tenure as mayor of Braddock started with a community that was embroiled in mass distrust between residents and the police force. Michael Brown's tragic death has revealed a deep distrust between some in the Ferguson community and its police force. It also developed a need to develop and widely disseminate law enforcement best practices for responding to public demonstrations. When the acting all dries up, I won't be going there, either to the police force or to the church. I'll have to think of something else. A decent government with an effective, but not gratuitously violent, police force and a fair court system are essential. This deters and incapacitates psychopaths, bullies and hotheads, and if it earns the confidence of the people, they don't have to become violent in self-defense. I support defunding the police, particularly the militarization of our police force and reallocating those resources toward public health. And not just health care but mental health support, affordable housing, education, alternatives to incarceration, non-emergency responses to those who might be in mental distress. The power to prevent violence is a power that no police force seems to have anywhere in the United States. I joined the police force with one motivation in mind, to become a high school PE teacher. After a year of working, I realized that A, I was making twice as much money as I would in the teaching profession, and B, I was having too much fun. I stuck it out for 32 years and no regrets. I just hope that we get to a day where we all feel like we feel protected and served by our police force. Fascists, Antifa attacked me, and an all-black police force in Philadelphia, and they claim to be fighting racism. I have a former Baltimore City police officer's uniform and his robe and hood. He was the Grand Dragon, which means state leader. His day job, what paid his bills, he was a Baltimore City police officer, not an undercover officer in the Klan gathering intelligence, but a bona fide Klansman on the Baltimore City police force. A lot of young policemen have told me that they saw Singam and joined the police force because of that. Some tell me they saw the training process and want to be a cop like that. Democratic government is difficult. It is much more difficult than populists claim. It's not like running a business or a police force. It demands compromise. A militarized police force facing down innocent protesters with sniper rifles and machine guns is totally unacceptable in America. I've been learning about defunding our investment in police force mentality, and reinvesting in, what do young people need? What do people who get involved in drugs need? What do families need outside of money to take care of their families? If you have a problem, the NYPD is the greatest police force to the world. The military has been tremendously important in the past during catastrophes and in protecting the population, but it shouldn't become an auxiliary police force. There's no social justice in destroying a police force. The fact is that my mother is a cop and generally kids of cops are a little different from their parents, they tend to be quiet. In my case, I was never interested in joining the police force, because right from my childhood I have seen the challenges in a cop's life. In the police force, 2, 3, 5 traitors are detected who are really working for someone else. When we cleanse the police of them, the problem will be simplified a lot. Terrorists will have no one to contact, they will be left without informers. Learning about crime in great detail forces us to ask ourselves how it happened, how the victims and perpetrators got to that point, how the law works, how the police force functions. In essence, Clinton's Anti-Terrorism Act would set up a national police force, over the long-dead bodies of the founders. The men and women that I've worked with on the police force are some of the most honest, heroic, and pure human beings I've ever met. You have to accept that Batman is a fact of life in Gotham City, and on top of that, you have to accept that somehow this city manages to function with a police force that's 90% corrupt. It used to be that a fellow went on the police force when everything else failed, but today he goes in the advertising game. We need a strong police force, the Interior Ministry of the Republic of Chechnya. We have to get rid of the traitors who have managed to penetrate into the law enforcement department. During the Umbrella Movement, the police force wasn't in control, and the police ignored the law and tried to use extreme force to hurt people. In New York City we have the biggest police force in the country. We have 35,000 uniformed officers. We're able to mass officers in significant numbers if we had to. To ensure the adoration of a theorem for any length of time, faith is not enough, a police force is needed as well. Nevertheless, I do know that we are part of a danger zone. We have military operations in Afghanistan and we're training the Iraqi police force. The terrorists also have us in their sights. I quit working in the police force full-time only after I won my third Mr. Olympia. The police force cannot be completely independent of the executive government. For most women, Greenham was a place of principle, growth and song, often joyful, sometimes terrifying, and almost always cold. As it got harder, with constant evictions and mounting violence from a frustrated and humiliated police force, the women got more determined. It was a community with a shared purpose, to live in peace. My family was poor. My father was in the police force and was drawing a small salary. Because of that I could not study. The attractive idea that we can now have a parliament of man with authority to control the conduct of nations by legislation or an international police force with power to enforce national conformity to rules of right conduct is a counsel of perfection. The police force has repeatedly demonstrated an inability and unwillingness to carry out its fundamental mandate, to serve and protect the people of Hong Kong. It has been reduced to a mere instrument of repression subservient to the political agenda of Beijing's regime in Hong Kong. We watch so many TV shows and movies about jaded or corrupt policemen, we forget people join the police force to do good, and they really care about that. The wild open market theory that died in 1929 had a run of just over 30 years. Communism, a complete melding of religious, economic, and global theories, stretched to 70 years in Russia and 45 years in Central Europe, thanks precisely to the intensive use of military and police force. When my dad first started out in the police force, wearing the uniform was a sense of pride, and it was respected in the community for what the police force was all about. Unfortunately today, the uniform is a target. Britain's police force is institutionally racist. This was the judgment of the 1999 Macpherson report, and it remains the case. My mum was a childminder, but now she fosters. My dad was in the police force, and now he's a private detective. When I was in my teenage years, I went to sign up as a cadet entrant to the police force but was at the very last moment rejected, just as I was about to sign my name on the dotted line. I won't get into why that happened, but it was a moment where it could have been predetermined then that I was off to become a policeman. I believe that the human race has developed a form of collective schizophrenia in which we are not only the slaves to this imposed thought behavior, but we are also the police force of it. I wanted to be in the police force, a teacher, a judge, lawyer, doctor, and other jobs. Of course, my mind changed as I started to face reality. I applaud the federal government for listening to our calls, stepping in to protect residents and assisting our police force and federal courts with this daily and growing threat of gun violence. It is obvious that the RUC is no longer accepted as an impartial police force. I've heard it said that those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. To that end, I think it's worth noting that the very first police force in America was created as a patrol to keep slave populations under control. What my parents taught me was that the hallmark of a thriving democracy was an effective and respectful police force. My father became the technical advisor for the Desert Fox, with James Mason as Rommel. They wanted an Aussie who had been in North Africa with the English, and found my father on the Pasadena police force. I completely disagree with the idea of eliminating ICE. We should not eliminate ICE, it's like saying we should eliminate the police force. When we were talking about this, an idea for this master vigilante, it was an urban guerrilla. One of my ideas was that he would be a member of the police force who turned on the government. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.